Hello, and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Ritchie of the MHRT Network. Over to my left here is the real Alex Gibbons. You can catch his stuff on Arrowhead Addict. And directly after this podcast, the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast, because why on earth would you make that an easy name to say?
Not anymore though. Fantasy season's over, so
all right. So you guys
podcast is going in hibernation until next year. So hopefully those who watched that got yourself some money. Those who didn't, me and Coach made out pretty good on our profits this year in fantasy. So maybe jump over the show next year.
Coach, we got a little little haircut going on there. No? Okay.
You're right, Avatar.
Oh, you got new shades and everything.
Yep.
There we go.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Coach who's joined us now, and Captain is not going to be with us tonight, unfortunately. He is currently leaving on an airplane or something like that. And there's a song about that somewhere. And of course, because Captain is
on an airplane.
I was gonna say no one's seen it.
I'll be back
airplane.
Yeah.
He's going to Carolina. He might get a drink thrown on him.
Yeah.
He's anywhere near Tepper, you just might.
It depends on which channel you're on there. Is it Rayan? The MHRT Ryan. Okay. Well, MHRT Network definitely does. In terms of the
I got a Venmo. You want to send some stuff to that?
I can shoot you my cash app.
Yeah. But we do.
Prepaid cards are cool too.
Yeah. We do. We have a donate button there. We also have super chats that are available through the channel as well if you'd like to support us. And also directly below in the show description, we have a merch store as well with some interesting hats and whatnot there. All that being said, though, let's go back and start reviewing what we got going on. We had some interesting results this past week, gentlemen. Some games went differently than others. I think, Coach, you and I can both agree that we kind of believe that the Chargers-Broncos game went about as expected.
Yeah, a big steaming pile of mess.
Yep.
Big
and I think there's been enough additional information that I'd like us to revisit the Russell Wilson piece, especially given what we saw this past game, and maybe dig into that a little bit more. Coach, I'm going to lay the groundwork here. I'm fairly certain we disagree on the Russell Wilson situation a little bit.
Okay.
Which, to be quite honest, it makes for a much more interesting show when you have two men that can be civil with each other, even if they disagree. And I think that makes for a wonderful dialogue.
You know, just sitting here.
Yeah,
you're top liver right now, sir.
Yeah.
I'm the AFC West champ. That's what I am.
Yeah, you are.
I mean, yeah. So let us lower tier guys bicker.
I'm the team.
Let us lower tier guys bicker then.
Yeah. So with regards to all that, guys, let's go ahead and kick off the show. Alex, we'll start off with your team's victory.
True.
And kind of go from there. What were your thoughts? What were things that you thought went as planned? What were some things that surprised you?
Yeah, surprising thing they won. I'd say surprising thing is scored over 20 points. Albeit it was through an ass load of field goals. But they were able to put points on the board. Obviously, Chiefs won 25-17. It's a little closer than you would like for playing a Jake Browning-led Bengals team, and especially I'd say a Jake Browning that's a little more down to earth than he was a few weeks ago. And it started off kind of typical for Chiefs games. Like they got kind of behind, in a little bit of an early deficit, mainly from a turnover. Big shocker there. But the big thing with this game was made incredible second half adjustments kind of across the board to end up winning. Locked up the AFC West title again, eighth consecutive division title. Secured the 3 seed, I think, regardless of what happens this next week. So, that I'd say for the amount of bad stuff that has happened and the amount of negative stuff I've spewed out about this team, for that to be the crap end of where things end up, could be worse. But yeah, in terms of the game as a whole, obviously the offense came around a little bit better. We definitely saw more explosiveness. Across the board. Would have liked to see him put more in the end zone, but that they didn't shoot themselves in the foot and turn the ball over and not get points on the board. MVP of the game, I think, has to go to Harrison Butker, who was 6 for 6 on field goals.
I needed that last week in fantasy, but I was gonna
say that's probably like a 30-point outing for him in fantasy.
I needed that last week. Where was that last week, Harrison?
Yeah, that was a different team then. But so Butker, Mahomes didn't have any picks this game, albeit did have a fumble. That was a strip sack that was turned over. Pacheco, for missing a week with a concussion and being questionable pretty much up until Saturday night, really came out there and just imposed his will on opposing defenders and kind of became a meme overnight with the amount of people on Twitter or X commentating about what he looks like or how he runs. I saw one and someone said he looks like he runs like he looks like he bites people. And I was like,
yeah, I saw that.
But he had 18 carries for 130 yards, averaged 7.2 a carry. Another 35 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. I'd say a pretty solid day for him. Rashid Rice continued to kind of blow past his expectations, I'd say, as a rookie in this offense. Had 5 catches for 127. Interesting stat I actually heard earlier. He's only 58 yards shy of being the Chiefs, breaking the Chiefs rookie record for most yards in a rookie season. So a little bit of foreshadowing, I guess, to this next week. But we'll get to that when we get to that. The one downside with the offense, like I said, didn't really get, outside of touchdown in the first quarter, didn't get no other touchdowns on the board. All Harrison Butker, the boot show. And then, Kelsey didn't really do much in this game and, had, I think, 4 targets for 3 catches and 16 yards. So didn't really get much of a Kelsey-esque outing. But, all in all, I thought much more improved and better looking offense. We didn't see him they seemed to have they were more in tune with their game plan and stayed with it and didn't, try to get cued after a turnover. Because when the strip sack happened, I was like, here we go. They're going to lose to the Bengals. That's we're going to somehow end up being a wild card team. And they bounced back, whereas, a couple past 2-3 weeks, that same turnover would have happened and that would have kind of been the point of implosion. Defensively, I think, outside of the first half, continuing to play pretty elite. Didn't give up any points in the second half. So, like I said, stellar second half adjustments. And, I'll give them a little bit of leeway too, because I'd say 7 points of the 17 that Cincy got were from that strip sack that was right in essentially the red zone. So again, not really putting the defense in a favorable position there. But yeah, they had 6 sacks in total and 4 came on actually the last drive. I'd say that was the biggest successful moment for kind of the defense, or the defense's way of saying like, yeah, hey, we're still here too. Bengals got the ball back with 2 minutes left. Easily could have, at 25-17, easily could have put the pressure on. And we saw back-to-back sacks from Chris Jones and Karlaftis to totally kill that drive. So good to see that. Did pretty good against the run, honestly, too. Only gave up 65 yards to Mixon, that was kind of traditionally their Achilles heel a little bit. And then, L'Jarius Sneed continues to shut down number one receivers despite all the trash they talk leading up to the game. Because Jamar Chase did not hesitate to do any of that, and held him to 3 catches for 41 yards. So I'd say that just further evidence that L'Jarius Sneed has been playing a little bit out of his mind this year, but it's also a contract year. So you know what they say about people, contract year is undefeated. But all in all, pretty, like I said, defense didn't allow any points in the second half. Offense continued to, be productive and put points on the board, and we saw a positive outcome. Eliminated Cincy from playoff contention, secured their playoff spot, continued to, I think, getting as a step in the right direction to get into the playoffs. Now, I still think they're pretty susceptible to an early round one exit. I don't think that you can really discount that, but I do think that this was a much better showing and a much more efficient showing offensively. It's the kind of outing you wanted to see going into the final weeks. There was a couple I call them issues that I'd say are masked by the win. A little bit is the first half, but Cincy totally murdered KC on time of possession the first half. I think they had the ball for almost 23 minutes where KC had it for 8. It's just terrible, as evident by the score going into the half. And then, on top of that, you have just kind of first half the same typical kind of oopsie mistakes that they were doing. Like rookie Wanye Morris missed a block, which caused a strip sack. And with the week earlier, I don't know if you guys saw it, but he got a clip go pretty viral where it looked like he glitched in the Matrix because everyone else moved, and it's like he missed the snap count. But it was kind of similar to that. It's a rookie out there, so take that for what it is. But you can't have those mistakes, especially ones that lead to a turnover and then ultimately points on the board. But yeah, all in all, a solid outing from the Chiefs. Hope they can build off of this. Continue to feed Pacheco, continue to find those explosive plays through a more conservative approach rather than just trying to force the explosiveness. Continue to kind of lean on that conservative execution that they definitely did more in this game. Obviously saw way more checkdowns in this game, not trying to force plays down the field. Saw them stick to the running game, and look what happened. Good things happen. They don't turn the ball over one time. You still wouldn't like to see that, but it didn't kill them as it has in years past or weeks past. But yeah, either way, pretty good outing for KC.
I think so too. I think that was one of the better games you guys have had in the last little bit. Overall, you got production out of both running back and wide receiver positions. Your defense didn't regress at all either. So you kind of, the positions that were already elevated stayed relatively elevated, but the other ones that have been mediocre, weak, whatever you want to call it, kind of stepped up and gave you guys a pretty solid shot. And I think that's a huge difference in this game versus others, and why you actually looked more competitive in this game, and it wasn't like a head scratcher as to, how did KC win again sort of thing, right? And I think this was one of those, you could definitely see it going either way, and it went KC's way given the right players stepped up, and frankly, players that hadn't stepped up also stepped up. And I think that's something that was really important for you guys. Now, what will be interesting is this the new norm, or was that, a random one-off? Like, are you guys able to build off of this new momentum coming into week 18? Because that would be tremendous for you guys going into the playoffs, obviously, because that means you're kind of gelling at the right time in the right moments. Not that I ever want to see KC gelling in the right time in the right moments, but nonetheless, being objective.
Yeah, why would you?
Yeah, exactly. But, as a football fan and just generally knowing what that's exactly what you want for your team is to, roll into the postseason in that exact form, right? So.
Yeah. Well, and they'll at least have one home game that, in the wild card round. And I'm sure it'll be a pretty, it's playoffs, so it's going to be a good team, but I haven't looked at like who the potential matchups will be, but that's the type of football they're going to have to play just with how their offense is. And the fact that, I don't think Kelsey has been 100% healthy all year. And I think that's on top of just age. I think finally, Father Time's kind of knocking on the door. But that component has obviously changed this offense. Whereas, I think that was the biggest difference from last year and this year. Was last year Kelsey was still, 100% Travis Kelsey, where you could throw him 15 targets a game and he's going to catch 12 of them and probably pop one off, for a big gain. Whereas now, it's just hard. They can't go to him. Teams are obviously double teaming him or bracket coveraging him and making guys like Rashid Rice, show up and show out. So, sticking to the run game is what they're going to have to do. And that's where I was kind of getting at too, Coach, is I thought it was the Bills, and that, we saw how that game was the first time. That was a totally different style of offense that KC tried to utilize in that game. And it was still a 3-point game. So, I think this is the new approach where they have to trust that, their defense is elite. Their defense can stop people. We just can't keep putting them in bad situations, which is, what they've done in some of these past losses that they've taken that have obviously created problems. So, yeah, like I said, we'll see where it goes from here, but I hope it was in the right direction.
I think that if they do what they did last game and they lean on Pacheco and lean on Rice, because those are reliable guys at the moment, if they pick up that philosophy and stick to it, I think they'll be, with that defense playing the way it's playing, I think they have a really good chance to still make a run. I'm not going to sit and act like they can beat the Ravens or make a ultimate Super Bowl run, but if they do that, if they do lean on those guys, because again, MVS is a dumpster fire when it comes to catching the ball and a few others. So
he had another drop this game.
My point
would
exactly.
be first down.
My point exactly. They
so yeah, lean on the IR. Tony, no.
Yeah. I think if you lean on your horses, they've got you good production throughout the season, then you'll be in good shape. But it's just a matter of just don't deviate from it. Just ride what brought you here.
I still maintain.
We changed our name.
No. I'm wondering if he realized that the MHRT network changed the network to MHRT from Mile High Roundtable. That's the only thing I'm wondering. But so this is what I'm trying to figure out here, Alex. Is it is clear that MVS is not a guy. He can't even catch the darn ball. Okay.
Yeah.
He is a waste of a roster spot. Okay, he just is. I'm sorry. It is.
Oh,
it is.
Like a $30 million.
Yeah.
I don't know what
he's a $30 million mistake, right? Yeah. So, but here's the kicker. Ultimately, Mahomes has struggled because he doesn't have another guy. He has Rice, which is playing. He's playing okay. I mean, great for a rookie, but he's playing okay. Like overall, he's looking okay. Still obviously got to work into the rhythm with Mahomes, and I think that'll probably come with the offseason. So I think, that's as they start to work on the shorthand, I think that'll really go a long way. Kelsey and Mahomes basically seem to have like a telepathic connection in terms of how they play the game, and I think that's a fair comment to make. Fair enough. I still don't get it. Why are you guys not just bringing in three or four wideouts on your practice squad, cycle and call one or two up for week 17, see which one connects with Mahomes, and use them over MVS and bench MVS come the playoffs? You need it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I just don't.
I'm trying to look at available free agents. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not even talking
but I think it's a more of a cap thing. I mean, I think it would be more of a cap thing than anything. But I don't know. I think that will happen. At the end of this year, I think that you'll see MVS. I'm pretty sure MVS, he signed a 3-year, like $30 million deal, but it was like a 2-year deal that they can easily get out of this year. So I think you definitely see him gone. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why they don't do that. Maybe it's just kind of more of an Andy Reid type of philosophy of, he's a very empowering, like, let the players be the players guy. And I mean, he's constantly, which, I mean, he's not the coach to go to the booth and berate them to, kick him in the rear. But he's a guy that's constantly, defended him. So maybe it's just been a matter of, like, they trust what they have in the room to get to where they want to get at the end of the year, which is fine. But as we've seen with this, how teams play them, it's pretty easy to stop, the Mahomes magic or just the efficiency of their passing game. When it's like, hey, if we just take out Kelsey, then we got to just have this rookie, who came into the draft with drop issues, be the guy to take us, to beat us. And Rice, for better or worse, which, I mean, he is 70 yards shy of 1,000-yard season. So, I mean, that's not terrible. That's not terrible by any means for a second-round pick. But, yeah, I mean, they definitely have needed some kind of jolt. And I think, they thought bringing Hardman back, making that swap, getting him would be all they need. And then just getting guys healthy. I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to think that they've not tried to use Kelsey as much with the idea that once we get into the playoffs, they will. And maybe that opens things up more. Cause I mean, myself watching the game, every game, unlike the rest of our viewers here are likely watching their team's game more than the Chiefs. It just seemed inherently different with how they've gone about the whole passing attack versus the past few years. And inherently different in the terms of, like, you just don't see them consistently going through Kelsey. And like I said, I think it's a matter of him getting hurt at the start of the year and him being old. But I also wonder if it's a matter of, like, they've made it a point to not do that until we get to this point of the season, knowing, hey, this guy's 33, about to be 34. Like, maybe we shouldn't throw him the ball 15 plus times a game. And so maybe it's that's kind of what I'm getting at with the, like, trust that, they're trusting what they have in the room, and maybe they had a bigger scheme at play. I don't know. Certainly not the approach I would like them to take for the purpose of sanity as a fan, but it's definitely been, I'll say, odd for the glaring issues that they've had and the almost glaring lack of attempts to fix it. At least immediate attempts to fix it.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm a big proponent of T. Higgins is going to be a free agent this year. So let's just cut shop and go get him. And Ed, to answer your question, I do think that they will move on from Chris Jones, mainly because it's it's a money thing, and I think there's other bigger holes to fill. And I think that you just get to a point where some other team is going to pay him more, and I don't blame him for, being 30 to go chase the guarantees and the money. But I just think it's going to get to it. I mean, KC's shown that they're not afraid to move on from someone, one because of age, but also because of financials. I wish that in the grand scheme, I wish in the grand scheme they would have traded Jones at some point to get something back for him. But I don't see him doing what he did this year in terms of like an incentive-ridden deal to get paid close to Donald money. Maybe he does. I don't know. It depends how the season goes. I mean, maybe he does if there's some unfinished business feeling to it, because he just kind of strikes me as that type of guy. Although he did sit out to get at least, some more money. But I do think, given how that went, and just where he's at, he's going to be chasing, a 3-4 year deal with large guarantees that I think that Casey would rather let someone else offer to him and pay him than themselves. And that frees up a bunch of other space for them to go get, a left tackle, and then to go get a receiver, and fill some other holes. I mean, I just don't think that there's enough there to bring him back and retool what I think they need to, at least right now. I mean, they could go out and win the whole thing. I'll be like, hey, just do whatever to bring everyone back again. Like, who knows? I mean, but right now I'd say that they're not bringing Chris Jones back.
Yeah, and to answer the question about what free agents are out there, there's no noteworthy guys in free agency right now. So that'd be the question, reason why they have not picked up anybody. This list is ugly.
No.
It's nobody noteworthy out here at all.
Right. I was very clear though.
Galladay, baby.
Yeah. Good luck with that. He's another person that can't catch.
No, but my whole point was, there's some of these younger undrafted dudes that are not necessarily free agents, but if you pick them up and you've obviously scouted these guys, so you're going to say, hey, look, he's a good route runner, or he's a this, or he's a that. Like, the fits with Mahomes. You know what he likes, what he doesn't like. All that kind of stuff. You've been scouting for him for a long enough period of time now that this is not hard.
Half a decade now.
Yeah, like this is not hard. And so the point here is that right now you've got a dude that you're paying a boatload of money that can't catch a football. That is a problem, because his job is to catch a football.
Yeah.
So
I know.
Like I'm sorry, like this is as straightforward as it gets, guys. Like, anyone is better than him is my point.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, it's bad. It's bad when the receivers as a whole lead the league in drops, but I think MVS is up. I mean, I think he leads the league in drops just individually.
Yeah. So anyways, that's the Chiefs game, and I do think it's going to be a very interesting look for you this coming week. You need to know, like I said earlier, was this a one-off?
Ed's not wrong. Kelsey's been dropping a lot and turning the ball over. It's been weird.
Yeah. So is this week a one-off turnaround, or is this kind of turning the page, so to speak, and actually coming back into your own as a team? Those are really your big upcoming kind of question marks that I think we'll talk about in the Week 18, final week coming up here on the show. But I think those are your big takeaways from this week coming into next, and it'll be an interesting discussion later on in the show. Coach, I think we move on to the review of the Chargers-Broncos game and start digging into what's happening there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Captain Jack did in fact record a video message for the show here. I just want to be forthcoming and just say the video itself was about a minute too long for it to be uploaded to play for you this evening. And so we weren't able to dovetail it into the show. But I do want to give absolute credit where credit's due. Captain took the time to record an 9-minute segment to try to get in touch with you all. But unfortunately, the video is just a little too long for the stream platform here to handle. It shouldn't come as a surprise that Captain had a lot to say. And
can imagine what was on that.
Yeah,
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious.
So
probably the 9/11. It's like 9/11 wasn't real.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm kidding.
But anyways, with regards to that, I just want to give credit where credit's due and let everyone know that Captain made the extra effort, despite the fact that he is in transit at the moment, to try to get in touch with everyone here and give his take on his Vegas Raiders, who are obviously incidentally playing the Denver Broncos coming up this week. But we'll discuss that a little later on. And so those of you in the chat that are Raiders fans, when we get there, I want your feedback in terms of the Raiders-Broncos game. So go ahead and start leaving those comments in the chat for us, please, so we can go ahead and bring those up at a later time. Coach, your thoughts?
It was a broken record at this point. I mean, what really can you say? Is this? I mean, same thing, same issues that have been an issue all year. Still can't run the ball. And then again, Easton Stick is not Justin Herbert whatsoever. So it's no overcoming in a sense, and it's nobody to honestly, take a step up and lead the charge to do things that are off platform, and things of that nature. So you get what you get. It's a very rough watch, in all honesty. I mean, like I said, honestly, it was a little bit of a rough watch on both sides, because it just seems like both teams were kind of stuck in neutral for most of the game. But they did make an effort to run the ball to not much success, obviously. I think that Austin Eckler was a high man with 46 yards, and then Easton Stick had 31 of the carries, and I think we had a total of 24 carries throughout the game. So, and then not having a receiver of any noteworthiness, Keenan Allen, no Josh Palmer. So, you left up to Alex Erickson and Gerald Everett to lead the charge. Still nothing from Quentin Johnston. It's looking more and more like a horrible pick, and I cringe every day and every time I see a Zay Flowers highlight, because again, that was my person that I wanted at that pick. Seeing Dawson Cage shine is another one. So I mean, just and I was telling a buddy of mine at work, the lack of I guess you can say awareness of who you should pick, kind of led to the idea of Telesco and Staley being fired, obviously.
Right.
So, just again, you just need to stop the bleeding at this point. Just get the season over with. It's definitely something that it's not much to cover. We got a lot of people that in the Chargers stratosphere already talking all season, already talking draft, already talking, the path forward, who's going to be the coach. I mean, that's more of a topic of concern or noteworthiness, versus the actual games. People, got people not even going to the games. Season ticket holders not going to games and things of that nature now. So it's an ugly sight. It's an ugly sight. You just wanted the bleeding and the abuse to be over at this point. And I don't think that they are doing themselves, any favors with what they have out there. But you just one of the things, you have to feel the team and you got to play the games. But honestly and truly, it's not much to honestly truly wrap your head around. That's positive. Outside of Mac getting his 100th sack of his career, that's positive. Yeah. I think he has all pro numbers this year. Bowl. Yeah, Pro Bowl and all pro numbers this year. He's up there in the sacks. I think he has 16 or 17 at this point.
I think he's leading the league, isn't he?
Well, he was at one point. I know. I think him and Myles Garrett were fighting for.
Yeah, he's fourth now.
Yeah.
Watt and Hendrickson and Josh Allen, they're ahead of him.
Oh wow, Josh Allen's in there. Okay.
16.5. So that's right there.
Okay. So yeah, gotcha. So yeah, I mean, again, there's not much positive in this whole dynamic. It really isn't. It's again, you're just waiting for it to be over. Anytime that you're facing a backup quarterback who was his first time out, and you would think that it's you maybe can make some things happen. But again, you're playing with second and third stringers. in the largest part, and they're that for a reason. So, I mean, it's not much to talk about from a Chargers perspective. I mean, I'm actually more interested in see what you think about the Broncos' performance because, again, it wasn't much to talk about. 3 field goals from us, not much offense. He can stick to it 220, but he had no touchdowns. He had a 78.8 quarterback rating. So, pretty much it.
So there's a few things as well that I think is important to note. Broncos were without their starting right tackle, which is a pretty key position in any offensive line, especially in today's NFL. The Broncos also had their starting wideout hurt. We also had our up-and-comer, who seems to be a pretty solid pick, actually, at the wide receiver position in Marvin Mims. He was out. Now, what we did see was a return of Johnson, who I really like as a wide receiver. I think he's got some real potential, and I'm glad we kept him, active, brought him back, had him play more, because I think he's a guy that Broncos country is going to have to, refamiliarize themselves with, because I think he's going to be a guy that we're going to be using more and more as we go forward. And I think that Sean Payton likes him as well. He seems like a Sean Payton type of guy. He'll block, he'll pass catch. He's got reliable hands, knows where he needs to be, runs pretty crisp routes, and is willing to run those crossers across the middle of the field, even if it means he gets, crushed. And he holds onto the ball after he gets hit, which is, obviously we know something that's what Sean Payton doesn't like, is wideouts and people that drop the ball. Alex, you kind of mentioned Kelsey having some issues with those types of things this season. In fact, he had some issues in the Broncos game, if I'm not mistaken, where he dropped 1 or 2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so those
he fumbled in the red zone.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are things that any coach, any team, just they're intolerant of when it comes to players. And you're simply going to end up with those players. If they weren't, let's put it this way, if Kelsey hadn't shown what he's done so far, they would probably start slowing down using him the amount that they would otherwise. But he isn't, like, they know what he can do. So they're kind of more reluctant to kind of say, dude, what's your problem? And I also think that one piece of note here, Coach, we did have a brief discussion on the Broncos Chargers last week's show. Some of the things that I predicted we were going to see, in fact, did take place in this game. We saw intermediate middle of the field routes getting thrown and utilized a lot more than in previous Broncos games. That's just a byproduct of a quarterback that is capable of making those throws and seeing that part of the field. And that's obviously Stidham versus Russell Wilson. And we also saw a quarterback, in my opinion, that from everything I could tell was running the offense more in tune with what the vision was for what the offense should have been. And I say this because we never went 3 and out. We never had a drive that just fizzled out and didn't work.
Was that a byproduct of good offense or just bad defense by the Chargers?
I think it was a bit of both. And I'm not going to be naive to say that it wasn't a bit of both, but I do think it is also a byproduct of a quarterback that better fits the offensive scheme that was put on the field and the vision of the offense that was there. And this is in spite of, I don't care what anyone says, poor offensive line play. And I'm willing to go to the mat on that one for the Broncos. I know that our offensive line rankings are in the top 10 to 15. However, Coach, if I'm not mistaken, I believe our left tackle had no fewer than 3 holds in that game, if I'm not mistaken.
I wasn't counting, but yeah, you had a couple.
Yeah, and so that's only because the refs finally called them.
Okay.
Like, right? It's like this isn't something that's new. It's just the refs finally called them. And so at some point, there will be a reckoning on the offensive line in the NFL, because this has been going on league-wide. League-wide, the refs have
I
not
feel
been
like this
calling-
year has just been wild for refs.
Yeah.
I mean, across the board.
No
Look at
more
the Lions
glaring.
Cowboys game.
Exactly. No
Hell.
more glaring than the Lions Cowboys game. Excuse me, Lions Cowboys game. No more glaring than that. It's been a myriad of miscues from the referees this year.
Right. And so, but ultimately, the thing is, though, is this isn't necessarily a miscue. This is just the refs haven't actually called that type of thing this year. It's not that they should have called it. It's that they just didn't call it.
Mm.
Right.
Speaking of that, did you see the mashup of somebody? I feel like it was a Raiders fan put on Twitter that how many non-holding calls didn't get called against Max Crosby throughout the season. Did y'all see that mashup? You didn't see that mashup? They did one for Michael Parsons and Max Crosby. He said he's been held a bunch of times and they didn't call it. Like it was blatant holds and the referee standing right there and they didn't call it.
Crosby is
and Myles Garrett,
one of the best premier rushers in the league, so it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And
honestly,
he's
though, in all honesty, as a former offensive lineman, if you want to call holding, you could call that on every play.
That's a fact.
Literally.
That's a fact.
So it's like, it's some of them. I think they're more ticky tack than not, but I don't think that's right either.
No, I think what has been pointed out, and I think it's correct in today's NFL, is the defensive players, especially the interior linemen, have gotten so much more athletic than they have traditionally been in the past. They just are. Like these guys are unreal in terms of size and speed as a combination. Like Jordan Davis and these other guys are just like mountains that can move at speeds that are just not fair.
Yeah.
and I
you
think
had that.
Go.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's that D tackle Adebayo or whatever from Northwestern. He ran like a 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Or something. Like you got 300 plus pound guys that should not be moving.
You running that fast? Exactly.
Yeah.
Jordan Davis was 350, ran 4.7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vita Vea, he's a tubby little thing too.
Yeah.
And
he can move. He can move.
Yeah. He's a running back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's exactly let's put it this way. You're not disproving my point.
No, we're in agreement.
I was just bolstering it.
Yeah. You're not disproving my point. That's exactly my point. And so you have these guys that are at an advantageous position rushing towards the linemen, and the linemen are, in my opinion, able to get away with a lot and have been getting away with a lot, and therefore their technique has suffered in the league. And you also have college, which is kind of whiz bang, flash bang, and they don't really go through the same fundamentals that they used to. And so you end up with these linemen that are coming into the league at the NFL level, coming against guys that are the best of the best that these guys have never played or played rarely, and they're just getting destroyed. And that's why we have this huge disparity between offensive linemen and defensive linemen at this point, in my opinion. And it's why we're seeing the product we're seeing on the field. All of the rules are in favor of the offense, and yet this has been the lowest scoring league in the entire NFL for like 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, because you got freakish athletes on the D line just ravaging your quarterback. Hence why we got almost half the league quarterbacks hurt right now. So
And again, we've covered this also on the podcast. So how are those quarterback rules helping?
Say it again, Rich. Say it again. I did a whole show on that. Exactly.
Yeah.
How's it working out for you?
Yeah.
How's it working out for you?
Yeah, we have a worse product on the field. We have quarterbacks that are poorer tacticians than they've ever been in terms of processing on the field. Look at Russell Wilson. He's a great example of a guy just like that. Yes, I said it.
And refs.
And the reffing, combined with D linemen that are better than the O linemen. And I mean, this is literally what you get. Like this is the end result. You know, you're gonna, if you basically put rules in place to encourage certain behaviors, don't be surprised when you see more of that behavior.
Well, I mean, that's the counter. I mean, because again, defensive players get paid too. So your counter to all these rules being in favor of the offense is just have, a massive amount of talent on the defensive side that you just can't combat. That's how I counted. That's how I counted the quarterbacks, being, again, unfairly, coddled. I'm gonna say it.
Protected.
Unfairly coddled and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, what you do? We go out and get you a 260-pound guy that runs a 4.4.
Yeah.
You can just get there and just wrap them up.
We're playing chess. That's my answer. You move, I move. That's my answer.
I'll give you 0.2 seconds to throw.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, and then of course the other issue there is like, okay, well, what are you going to do on the linebacking side? Well, I got a guy who's 6'5", 250 pounds, and runs a 4.3. Runs a 4.3. Yeah, runs a 4.3.
225, 56 times, dude.
Yeah, exactly. You can cover sideline to sideline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you look at the Broncos inside linebacker, right? Sanders. Like you saw him running sideline to sideline in the Chargers game alongside a scat back.
Yeah.
And
I told you he's a stud.
Yeah.
I told you.
And Sanders is not a small dude.
No.
He is not a small guy. He is
he's a freakish athlete.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So that's kind of my biggest takeaways ultimately, and I think this is something that needs to be said, is it is clear to me. Let's put it this way: you got a dude who's due a contract or has a contract that's 245, 250 million, whatever kind of sliding scale you want to call it, and we saw a second tier quarterback come in with no right tackle and his top two wide receivers, no Jerry Jeudy doesn't count, and put up the same or better numbers than Russell Wilson. And you can say whatever you want as a member of Broncos country. You can kind of highlight whatever you want, and you can put up Russell Wilson versus Pat Mahomes numbers. We can get into that later too. At the end of the day, the backup quarterback either matched or beat Russell Wilson's numbers when we played the Chargers even in week 17, when we played you guys just a few weeks prior. And so at that point there, if you're not seeing this precipitous drop off in quarterback play when you're playing your second tier quarterback without most of your roster there, and Wilson had most of your roster there and put up the same numbers, let's put it this way: Russ may not be the only problem, but he certainly is part of the problem.
For sure.
Right. And I think that's a fair comment to make, given what we saw play out in week 17. And yes, I am going to be fair and balanced in my critique, but I'm also going to be very critical and probably harsher than most people are going to be in this situation, because I'm sick of seeing nonsense.
Just hate him, Grandma.
hate him.
Yeah. And look, I've not made it. I was never been shy. I was not a fan of the Russell Wilson pickup by the Broncos. So I think I need to be, full disclosure and maybe my bias coming into this. But at the same time, I did also think that Russ would have fit into a proper Hackett system if it was run the right way, and it wasn't.
You're not wrong, Biggie.
I don't know. I'm not a advocate of Hackett's play calling. Period. I mean, we've seen what he's done in New York.
Yeah, look at the Jets' offense is just as bad.
Well, worse. So I'm not putting any stock in to the idea that Nathaniel Hackett on by itself without a Hall of Fame quarterback can get it done from a play calling perspective, in my opinion. But there's a lot of misgivings in New York, to be honest with you, because I don't know why they didn't call Joe Flacco or Carson Wentz or somebody like that week 2 when Aaron went down for the year. So, this whole, garbage about I can come back off of, at the end of the season, never was all smoke and mirrors to begin with. You should have called it back up to keep yourself afloat. So if he did come back in some miracle, you'd have been a playoff hunt versus being in a lottery hunt.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's kind of where my take is from the Chargers-Broncos game. And I think that the Broncos and the Chargers coach are in the exact same spot right now. I think, although I think the Broncos in a slightly different spot, obviously, due to Russell Wilson. And the fact we're likely moving off of him at the end of this year or something like that. So I do think that the Chargers are in a position where you want to see the depth on the field. You want to see if guys are going to step up and play out and might fit your team next year so that you can save cap where you can and maybe spend cap in other places where it makes sense to do so. Whereas what I think what the Broncos are right now is they're going to want to bring back in a couple of the starters because they want to know if Stidham is going to look better or the same with those types of guys on the field, because they're trying to evaluate the quarterback play. I mean, the Chargers don't have a question at quarterback. You got your guy. It's like this is not a question mark or an I don't know. You guys are looking for the other positions on your team in terms of who works, who doesn't, who fits, who doesn't, why not, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it should at this point just be complete and utter teardown. I would say the things you have, I guess you can say there are certainties when come from a cap perspective should remain. The O-line, you got to figure out, you got to reboot the whole idea of running back, tight end, and secondary, the corners, linebackers is not much of I think that the linebacker group is probably pretty solid, but D-line as well. I think that the interior D-line needs to be rebooted on top of other areas. So I think that they need to almost a complete teardown.
You need to cut it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's almost a complete utter teardown. You like I say, you keep your O-line, you got to find a center too, because I don't think Corey Lindsey's gonna play again. I think he's done. So I think you need to find yourself a legit center. And another weapon outside of Keenan Allen to ultimately help your quarterback out, and and start from there. That's really what it boils down to me.
It's Bosa gone.
I would because he's younger, and he's due a lot of money. I would try to trade him, but the problem is he's been hurt the last couple of years, so I don't think you're gonna garner much for him. Honestly and truly, you probably be able to get more for Khalil Mack right now than you would be able to get for Bosa, and Khalil Mack's older.
Which is unreal.
It is exactly
unreal.
Exactly.
Unreal. Yeah,
but and you have to give the man credit because he could have mailed it in. He's a veteran. He made his mark in his league. He didn't need to go out here and be full tilt 100 miles an hour, and he's been doing it. His numbers speak to it. He had 7 total tackles. He had 2 tackles for loss, a sack, and 5 solo tackles, and a pass and a quarterback hit. So that speaks to volumes of how much he still is out here, with the foot on the gas. So,
right.
So again, you probably would get more for him, although he's been a more consistent and non-injured player for us. You may someone keep him and keep Thule, let them be the edge rushers next year versus the Bosa. But again, I don't think you're gonna get much of anything for Bosa, and he's more of a punitive dead money hit from Bosa's perspective. Yeah.
He may also be a guy that you'd be willing to package a late round pick with, and just to offload the cap hit. So, for example, like you might be willing as a team to say, here's a 7th and Bosa, and then you're going to give us back, say, a 5th or something, or a 6th, just to get rid of the cap hit.
Well, you're not gonna get rid of a $20 million cap hit just that easy. There's way more punitive than that.
This cap's made up, man. Look at the Rams.
Well, yeah.
But
I don't think we have the financiers that the Rams have. Unfortunately,
just to write it off.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good, but yeah, Bosa's due. He's literally $22 million in dead money right now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A late round pick is going to garner $1 million in that. So you're still looking at close to $22 million in just dead money that you're going to eat by trading them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show. We obviously got some fiery comments coming in here about the Russell Wilson and Broncos situation. I think this might be as good a spot as any in the show to pull up those comments and have these discussions with everyone here. Obviously want to hear from all of you that have joined us live, your thoughts and comments. I'll give you some of mine. and we'll talk about just a little Broncos news, just because the Broncos have kind of made the news a tremendous amount with some circumstances, situations, what's going on. So just on some of the players that have been brought up here in terms of returning to Denver, etc. I said it last show, and I think I feel more confident and comfortable in my comments now more than ever. Last year when Sean Payton came in, I thought that was going to be the year that we were going to start fire sailing the roster. To his credit, I think Sean Payton said, no, let me see what I got and let me see what I need and who I want to keep. I think we've seen guys that have just been ejected outright because Sean Payton said I can't have them on my team. And that, your Randy Gregory's, so like those guys that they're just not on the team anymore. But I think he made efforts to make certain players work. And you'll likely start seeing these other guys gone now at the end of the season. Now, I think that's a seamless transition, if there is any, to discuss the Russell Wilson piece. I think that when fans and fanalists and others are looking at this, I think we need to all understand that as it sits right now today, we have effectively heard PR spin, but not direct communication from the team. We have heard both direct communication and PR spin from Russell Wilson's side. And we've also heard what is obviously a one-sided letter from the NFLPA, which, interestingly enough, contradicted slightly what a verified on-the-record report of Russell Wilson's agent said. And so I think there's some interesting pieces that need to be flushed out here. I think there's a lot of stuff that we're not privy to. And I think we just need to, I think we can formulate opinions and be willing to be wrong, but I think it's the last part of that comment there that is probably the most important. We need to be willing to potentially be wrong and say, look, I made my kind of opinion based on the information that I had at the time, but I'm willing to change my opinion if I get different information, because that's going to obviously change what I think and how I think it. So with that in mind, I'll give you kind of my general thoughts on the Wilson situation. And Coach, curious as to your thoughts specifically, because I know you covered this on your Tuesday special with Coach Kurt. By the way, those who don't check out Coach's Tuesday show, highly recommend it. Great show with Coach and Coach Kurt every Tuesday. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, if I'm not mistaken there, Coach. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's correct.
Perfect. So here's some things that we know. We know for a fact, has been confirmed by both parties effectively at this point and by the agent, that Payton, George Payton, the Denver Broncos general manager, as well as a VP of football operations from Denver, made a call to Rodgers, which is Russell Wilson's agent, and proposed that Russell Wilson's injury guarantee be moved back. And yes, it has been confirmed that that call was made just after the Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So that has been confirmed. And what has also been confirmed by Russell Wilson's agent on the record was that that call was not hostile in any way. Now, that to me is the important piece, because if that call was not perceived to have been hostile, and this is the agent on the record right now, then I have a hard time believing that there was such a demand or command, if you will, of agree or else, effectively, which is what's been presented in the media. I think, for what it's worth, that what has happened here is there has been assumptions and leaps of assumptions, if you will, based on comments that were made. So His agent, as in Russ's agent, probably went back to Russ, which I would have done as well if I was Russ's agent. So full disclosure, and said, the team has basically said that you got to move this date. It's my opinion that they're going to find a way of benching you if you don't agree to this. Now, I think that's a fair piece to present to your client as an agent. And obviously this is speculation. This isn't confirmed, but I would imagine that's probably what happened. And so Russ is saying the Broncos threatened to bench me. And the team is probably saying, what are you talking about, dude? You played him until week 17. We never threatened to bench you. We asked you to move a date, right? And I think this is generally speaking what has probably taken place. I'm willing to bet that some variation of that is probably what took place. I am very interested in being presented with new information that may change my opinion. But as it stands right now, as a Denver Broncos fan and someone that has been longing to see some proper play on the field for my team for quite a few years now, Russ was never my guy. I was hoping that he would really work out with the new coach and the new scheme. It has not worked out. Russ has proven himself to be limited. And this is true. Sean Payton was not the guy that selected Russ or wanted Russ as his quarterback. He inherited him coming into the team. What is also true is the ownership had a role in signing Russ's contract, because no one agrees to that without ownership. No one signs anything to do with that without ownership approval. And ownership also signed off on Sean Payton sitting him down. Both are true. And so either way, I think this is the right decision for the Broncos, given the money guarantees that are coming up. And I think that we need to move on and find a quarterback that's going to better fit a more dynamic offense. And I believe we can be a more dynamic offense without Russell Wilson as our quarterback.
Okay. Well, clearly I don't agree. And it's not necessary. I'm not even going to get into the idea of his abilities and his talent at this moment. I'm going to get into just the logistics of what happened with the contract and the discussion, because no matter if I'm playing, at a Pro Bowl level or I'm playing at a Zach Wilson level, I mean, and that's just, that's just my first example I can think of that a quarterback just played bad for the large parts of the season. We went into the season. Sean Payton came into this team with the understanding that Russell Wilson was going to get this contract. You knew that. Mm-hmm. So if you had such an issue with that not being air quote your guy, why did you take the job? Because it's going to be ridiculously punitive, because the contract is airtight. He has an exorbitant amount of guarantee money. He has a good ironclad injury clause. And he also has a no trade clause. So you would basically have to get him to agree for him to say, I'm okay with you getting rid of me. I'm okay with you either trading me or cutting me. Because, if outside of that, it's going to be highly punitive for you to get rid of me. So again, if Sean Payton knew from the get-go that was the situation and it was going to be very highly punitive, my suggestion to him would have been to make it work for the length of time that it was going to be less punitive to move off his contract, rather than giving him maybe a half a season to say he's not my guy. And also paying Jared Stidham $5 million to be your backup was also a bit of an innuendo that he wasn't a full believer in Russell to begin with. But again, you can blame George Payton for actually facilitating the deal, but you knew you were not a victim of that contract. You were a volunteer, because you literally signed a contract to be the Broncos coach despite that. So again, if you wanted to be fair, from a person to person standpoint to Russell, you should have met him halfway and said, we're going to try to make this work for the time that your contract is here. You're going to be the franchise. That's what that in the way the Broncos are set in the way they did things from the trade to the contract that he ultimately is under now. You had no choice but to be in this situation. You gave up a king's ransom to get him. So to say that you were going to come in after a year and a half to basically get rid of him after giving up a king's ransom, and you really got nothing out of him, well, would be bad business. It would literally admit the fact that you basically got fleeced in the deal, and what you did was a complete and utter travesty in regards to how you acquired Russell. So that being said, again, like I said in my show yesterday, you should have, not asked the man to remove a trade, not trade clause, but the injury clause, because again, you put that stipulation in there to begin with. If you didn't like it from the get-go, you shouldn't agree to it. That's part one. Part two is the fact that, again, why as a player would I give up on my injury guarantees when there's 100% injury rate in the NFL?
Yep.
So again, as a man, I'm a family man. I got a wife and kid. Why would I risk my, livelihood and my life in a sense and give up my guarantees because you want to make it easier for you to cut me? So again, the Broncos are just as much as an issue or at fault for this not working as you can ever lay at Russell's feet. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been Patrick Mahomes, no. But you also could argue that he's still been better than half the quarterbacks in this league. I'm sure that you would much rather have Russell Wilson than Zach Wilson, Jake Browning, Desmond Ritter,
Daniel Jones,
Sam Howell. Again, it's a lot of quarterbacks. You be in a much more maligned situation than having Russell Wilson as your quarterback. Let's just be honest about it. Yeah, he may be short. He may not be able to see over the middle of the field, all the critiques you want to give him. But he still gives you a better chance to win football games. And he won you quite a bit of football games. And we saw you beating your chest when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs early in the season. And that was Russell's doing. That wasn't Jared Stidham. So he definitely had some bright spots despite Sean Payton already looking at him sideways because he didn't want him to be his quarterback in the first place.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I have made several comments on the show, and I've actually remained very consistent on those comments, that I don't believe that was Russ's doing per se in those wins. It was my opinion in the Chiefs game and in the last game where we made that comeback to potentially win. We end up losing that one as well, that those were scripted plays by Sean Payton. I've said this on the show, like I'm on record.
3 touchdown passes. Right? How does he not be the main reason why y'all won that game? He had 3 touchdown passes.
No, I'm not saying that he's not.
Chiefs had 4 turnovers too. So,
right. Like I'm not saying that he's not an accurate thrower of the football, because there can be multiple things in any given situation that are true, right? And so, as an example, I think Russ actually is a fairly accurate thrower of the football. I also think
argue that.
Yeah, I also think that Russ has a problem when he throws the football where he doesn't throw guys open. He waits for them to be open to then throw them the ball. And this is why you end up in those situations and circumstances when you watch back the game film and the tape where you see him hold on to the ball just way longer than he really should. And he takes a lot of those runaround sacks, right? Where, you've seen his sack numbers this year. I don't know if you've seen his actual stats in terms of kind of all the way down to that level.
He's been sacked 45 times this year. He's been sacked 45 times.
He's been sacked 45 times this year. But then in addition to that, look at the number of yards that he's given up in the sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is he getting sacked, but he's given up huge sack yards on those sacks. And this is another interesting take that I actually lend some credibility to when I heard it, which is, all right, you're approached by your team to basically say, we want to move that injury guarantee. Your agent has basically all but told you that you're likely going to be benched at some point this season. The first thing you're going to do is to protect your stats, to make your stats look good. Right? Like you're going to, Coach, to your point, you're a family man, you got kids, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to look after number one at that point, right?
Yeah. Well,
No, I'm not even laying blame at his feet for doing that. I'm saying you're going to do that. Like that is a fact, right? And
let's be honest, when they approach you with the injury concern or they want to move it, you already know the writing's on the wall. You already know what they're planning on doing. So now automatically put you in fight or flight mode. Automatically.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand that. Like I'm not naive to that fact whatsoever. It doesn't change the fact though that what he started doing was to protect the padded stats of touchdown to interception ratio. So he held on to the ball when he shouldn't have to not throw a pick. He stopped taking the risks by throwing it downfield and started checking down and throwing things to the outside more than he otherwise did in the early stages of the year. And the heat map shows that actually when you look over the first few games versus the Chiefs game on, there's a divergence in certain play styles and certain types of play. And I think that that's part of why we saw some of the issues as the year continued to progress with the Broncos, despite winning, where you kept on seeing this odd frustration between the coach and the quarterback, where the play on the field did not match what the game plan was. And I think, again, I don't even necessarily want to say blame, because I think that's the wrong choice of words, but you're going to have a quarterback look after themselves because they know that they're probably going to be cut, and therefore they want their numbers to look good to say, look, I'm better this year and I'm fixed. Fair enough. But I think it's also fair to then look at the coach and the offensive play designer to say, dude, I drew up this play and the wide receiver that I schemed to be wide open was, and you didn't even throw him the darn ball. Like, what is your problem? And so I can see it from both sides of this. And as I said on multiple shows here on this show, Russ has missed many, and I don't just mean one or two or every other play. I mean many, 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 many wide open wide receivers, as he did last year. Hackett didn't have the discipline that a Sean Payton does. And I was pointing out last year on the show that there was mid and deep crossers that Russ just completely missed. Like didn't even throw the dude the ball. And you can see the video and the clips of the guy literally running across the field wide open.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Again, but those type of things are not necessarily punitive either, in a sense where if you feel like, in your deep recesses of your mind, you feel like it's a chancy throw, he might not throw it. He might feel that again. It might come back at him. That kind of thing. If a defender if you don't feel like in his arm strength or his accuracy that he can get it up and over the defender and it won't be, intercepted or interfered with, then, he may feel like he don't want to make those throws. Again, I've seen plenty cut ups and plenty mashups about, people breaking down film and saying that, he has issues with, certain parts of the field because of his height and stature. I get all that.
Yep.
I get all that. I'm just clearly in plainly speaking on how they handled the situation. It could have been handled very, very much different. And it started from day one, between Peyton, in criticizing Hackett and the former regime that was there in part one, to criticizing what Russ was doing with the parking spaces in the offices. Like, he literally was coming for his neck the moment he got there. So that kind of let me know, lending to the idea that Russ was on his shit list, from day one.
He was going to be a scapegoat regardless. Like, this was inevitable.
This is the Derek Carr situation all over again to me.
Unless they went, 10-6, we're in the playoffs. Like, Russ was going to be the problem.
Absolutely,
I agree with Coach on that.
Yeah, especially after last year.
And I can't remember who. I was listening to someone kind of talking about this, and they mentioned how, once Peyton came in, he immediately was like you said, Coach, he's like, last year's the coaches were that might have been the worst job ever. And then he's like, I told Russ to stop kissing babies. You're not running for office. But then whoever was talking about it was like, well, Drew Brees was just like that. Like, he kissed more babies than Russell Wilson.
Exactly.
But he didn't say it. He didn't say it to him. And he's like, it's to me, it's kind of, those are like the sprinkles to let you know that it's like, unless this thing is just an immediate 180 turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, unless he sets the world on fire, there's no way. It's
going to be the problem. It's going to be Russ. It's going to be these other people that people signed before me. It's going to be everything else before it's Sean Payton, you know? And so it's like,
go ahead.
Everything just has to get stripped down before it's like you start making the blame be at the top, or just not finding the right guy. I mean, with that being said, I do agree with I think both you guys are kind of in agreement that Russ is obviously, he's not Russell Wilson he's not 2013 Russell Wilson.
Right.
And so he's not the same QB, whereas, people want to say Russell Wilson and imply the guy in the 3-4 year stretch right when he came into the league with the Seahawks, when he had an elite defense and could run around and extend plays and essentially do what Mahomes does. Where he just he runs around and moves around until he finds someone open, and then, wow, holy crap, that was cool. Well, then you get to later in his career and he can't do that stuff, and you have to rely more on the ability to read and hit your first read and
quarterback play.
Yeah,
quarterback play. Yeah.
So I mean, I get the frustrations with it, but I do think the whole process could have been handled better. And I say that from the perspective of the Broncos didn't have to sign him to this fat extension before he took a snap for him. I'm sure that was addressed and discussed, or Russ pushed for that. But if I'm a GM paying the money, I'm gonna be like, F that, dude. Why would I guarantee you, way more money than these other guys when you haven't even done anything for me yet?
Yeah,
like I tell him, maybe like, what you gonna do?
I actually
maybe renegotiate the current one he's on, but giving him a whole brand new deal, that's questionable. And that's the point I want to make, is that you got to look at two things here. You had one coach when, again, we can go back to the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. They got Hackett because they wanted Aaron Rodgers, didn't get Aaron Rodgers, ended with Russell Wilson. But so, but the desperation of the franchise is the reason why we're here, because you've had issues in the past 20 odd years. Let's go back to John Elway. You've had issues finding a franchise quarterback. Outside of Peyton Manning for those few years, John Elway and Peyton Manning are your staples of who your franchise quarterbacks were. In between those years is dicey. It's dicey. You didn't have guys at that level, those Hall of Fame level quarterbacks. Nope. So what you get to the point where you keep banging your head against the rock saying we can't seem to get the quarterback right, you make a big swing. Take a big swing. And that's what they did. They traded the capital away that they traded away for Russell. They got him thinking that he could be the game-changing quarterback that they need. They paid him, and then they realized that, again, Hackett wasn't the guy because, again, Hackett couldn't hack it. My quote from when they signed him the first time out, he couldn't hack it. So let's go get a rock star coach that's a former Super Bowl champ to make Russ work, because, again, we're paying him. Has to work. It has to pop. He has to be the guy, and Sean Payton is. If he can't fix it, nobody can, and that's what the front office mindset was. But Sean didn't look at it that way. But I don't think he sold the bill of goods to the ownership in that fashion. I think he told them what they needed to hear to make it seem like he was okay with Russell, but he really wasn't.
See, I have a completely different take on that. I first off, I don't think the ownership group would have ever brought in Sean Payton, and I don't think Sean Payton would have ever come to the Denver Broncos if the discussion was not, I will see what I can do with Russ and see if I can improve things to a certain point. That said, if I present and can show, somehow, some way, then I need your assurances that if this guy doesn't work out, that he can go. Otherwise, I'm not coming out of the booth. Or I'm going to go take a different job where I have a different quarterback or someone else that I would much rather work with. I'll come to you, but these are my stipulations. I also think that a very similar conversation was likely had with Russell Wilson prior to him waiving his no trade clause from the Seattle Seahawks. I would suspect that any competent, and look, I cannot like Russ's on-field play. He is not only a solid human being, but he is also a smart dude as well. And so we have to lay that on the table. I cannot like his play on the field, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for him as an individual. Absolutely. And for what he's done off the field, right? Absolutely. And so he's probably not waiving that no trade clause unless there is a side contract, as in an agreement that has been put forth in writing with signatures on it, guaranteeing him a contract extension. Because why on earth would he want to move his family if he didn't have kind of the guarantee, if you will, at some point of an extension in that contract? Because he's even all but said it, and you could very much see it in his face. There's some things that I think that Russ has embellished, but there's other things that I think he's been dead right on, and you could tell he's very emotional when he said it. Like his facial expressions were different. He said, "I came here to play for 7 years." You could see it on his face when he was saying it, that there was a little extra emotion to it. I came here to play for 7 years. I didn't expect this to be a short-term stint. I didn't expect this to be, a quick turnaround. I was expecting progressions to take place. And I think that was a very honest very honest take by Russell Wilson. And I think that was exactly what his true feelings were. I think you got a glimpse into, behind the curtain with him in terms of his actual thoughts and stuff there, because he seemed extremely emotional, and likely because I think he wanted to raise his family in Denver.
Yeah, I mean,
probably,
again,
but at the same time, dude, it's a business. Like, he should.
Exactly.
I agree.
He should want to do that.
Dude.
And how shady people can be about contracts. Why wouldn't you want those guarantees if you're going to move? Again, that's why you have a no trade clause, because you don't want to be reamed and not get everything you need and want out of your deal. Because again, this is Russell Wilson's last big deal. Let's be real about it. No matter how it ends, if we get cuts this year, or whatever they do with his contract after this season, he's 35 years old. This is his last big deal. So why would you go all in on the idea of getting everything he possibly can get, because this is my last big payday?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And so what we were talking earlier about kind of the path forward for Russ and the Broncos. There are two approaches to this. And I think it just depends on how civil both sides wish to be. And I mean both sides, because these are two different sides of the same coin, and they both have to.
No, I don't think he's going to be in Denver anymore.
But wait for it. No, but wait for it though. Okay, so he refused to move back that injury date. Fair enough.
Yeah.
There's a different take on that, by the way, which is also, by moving that back, he likely would have been more likely than not back in Denver for 2024. By moving that back. And because of that, though, I think the Broncos are now basically forced into a position where they're going to cut him. Now, on the flip side of that, though, if depending on kind of what becomes of all of this, Denver, well within their right, could say, hey, we're basically guaranteed or have to pay the entirety of your salary for 2024. We'd rather have you here. We're not going to want you going somewhere else. So we're just going to go ahead and keep you, but you're going to be a backup. Now,
well, how do you have a guy making
a $40 million backup?
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I never said it made sense. I said that they're paying him anyway, and they may well do it.
I mean, I don't.
I mean, let's just look at the numbers. If you cut him after the season is over, he is $85 million in dead money right now.
Yep,
that is 35% of your salary cap for next year. 35%. So, how do you expect to field the team properly with being handicapped at $155 million in cap space versus 240? That's very damaging. That's why I said it should have been a situation where you've gone to this contract a couple of years, maybe 2 to 3 years, and then and groom his replacement in the same time frame, and then moved off of him. But if you wanna just stand on business, for lack of a better term, and say that I'm gonna cut him now, you're going to be crippled in the cap for the next year or two.
And I think you guys are kind of missing what I'm saying here. I think the Broncos made a mistake when they signed the contract, but they still signed the contract regardless. They're on the hook for it. Like,
oh yeah.
And at the same time,
with a no trade clause, you're definitely on the hook for it, because you can't trade him easy either, because you have to approve.
Yeah. And so part of me thinks this is that the Broncos have the ability to play hardball, just as Russ has the ability to play hardball here. And I think that it is in everyone's interest, both the Broncos and Russ's, to get him into the early days of free agency as quick as possible in the new league year with a post June 1st cut date or whatever it is. And you end up spreading that cap hit over 2 seasons, and you kind of go that way. That would be the way that I think this works. And I think that's the best thing for both parties. And then you let Russ maximize his market, where he likely lands with, oddly enough, a few teams have come up, including the Raiders.
I don't know. He's going to Atlanta, man. They can't get Justin Fields. That's where he's going.
But you would like to believe you go with Justin Fields, right? Because he's cheaper and he's younger.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying. But to bring up draft time Broncos country, well, he's quoting Big E. Big E did say kind of what you were saying, Rich. Basically tell him, like, you're going to be a backup. If you want to go find a trade, go find it. But otherwise, you're going to be number 2.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I'd give him a shirt that says number 2.
Wow.
Come here, number 2. I don't know. Yeah, the player side of it, or just the whole business aspect in general. Like, I get why the Broncos asked him to do it. I get why Russell Wilson said, "F you, I'm not doing that."
Yep.
So both sides should understandably or anticipate the impasse that's ahead, because
Yeah, not only did he's $85 million in dead cap, you're already $18 million in the hole before the year starts. So you're literally $100 million in the hole if you cut him, you're already $100 million in the hole. Jesus.
He's got some cheddar cheese, man.
Yeah.
No, 100%. And so, look, it's not pretty. This was, it was handled not great. And I think
being modest. That's being modest.
I would honestly say it was, because I think Russ strategically knew what he was doing by saying some of the stuff that he said with the media and like playing the kind of like the poor me card with it. Because I'm like, dude, like you had to understand that last year was like terrible. Like you could be as subjective as you want to be, but you still have to recognize that like you were pretty bad last year, regardless of the other factors, and that you're really not all that much better now, despite the wins and better touchdowns. But I mean, he was still turning the ball over at a crazy rate and everything else, and similar, wouldn't be able to put up points. Like you had to understand that you weren't producing like you were in Seattle, and this team didn't have like the ties of drafting you or developing you that Coach Carroll in Seattle would. So like you had to get that, like, oh, if this didn't drastically improve, like they're probably going to try to find a way to get out of this. So, but then turn around and go to the media and act like you're so blindsided by it, or I came here to play for 7 years, even though I'm 35. And should probably realize that if I play bad, they're not going to want to keep me for 7 years. Like, so I think some of that was like poorly handled in trying to put the blame back at a franchise, especially when you should probably be preparing yourself to market your talents to someone else to try to trade for you, because that would be the easiest way for you to probably keep the most money you can while ending up in a different situation rather than being cut. But I don't know. It could have been played out different on both ends. But I do think that Russ I think the Broncos tried to keep it in-house, and Russ, after realizing like they played their hand and they're going to go with it, was like, no, I'm going to light the house on fire on my way out.
Hey. Now, the most advantageous scenario for the Broncos at this point is that if they can figure a way, or if they happen to get themselves into a situation where a team didn't land a quarterback in a draft, they didn't land a quarterback in free agency, and they really need one, and they're really desperate, if you trade him post June 1, trade, not cut, and then and only then he's an $18 million cap hit for a trade, not a cut, but a trade. But you got to get somebody to convince somebody to take on that contract. And who has the means? Who has the means?
Well, at that point there,
Draft Day, the movie would tell you Jacksonville.
Yeah. The thing is, you're not going to have many teams with that much cap space left
at that point in the season. No, exactly.
It's just not going to happen.
It's not very likely.
It's just not going to happen.
It's not very likely.
So, one of the other things that hasn't been spoken about yet is so if he's a post June 1st cut,
$35 million.
Pardon me?
$35 million.
That's $35 million in the first year, and then $37 million in the second. However, that second year guarantee is on a sliding scale.
Yeah, it's $18 million, $18 million, $8 million, and $4 million until 2028. That's what you'd be on the hook for the next 4 years. Yeah.
My understanding is that it is rolled in to the next 2 seasons.
Well, you would honestly, you'd rather roll it further down than that because you're taking more of a money hit up front rather than kind of staggering it and making it a less of a hit per year, and then you can kind of keep yourself competitive in the cap. Because if I just pay
this is why
35
we
and
need
35
deferment.
yeah, right. You defer it to 2028 because again, it gets less punitive as you go along. Because again, the first year is 35, the next year is 18, the next year after that's 18, then it gets that down to 8, then it gets down to 4, then it's done. So you gain more money back per year, and you save more money. You saving $37 million the second year, 40 million, 45 million, 50 million. So yeah, by the time it's completely over and you defer it down to 2028, it will be much more advantageous to you do that way than just taking all the money hit up front.
Yeah. And so what my understanding of the way that this contract is written and the way this works is if they cut him post June 1st, the second part, so next year it's a 30 some odd million hit if they cut him post June 1st. Like that it is exactly what it is.
35.
And then where it becomes more of a sliding scale is if Russ goes on the open market and a team signs him to a deal, anything that they pay him in 2025 comes off the total that he is owed by the Broncos.
I don't think that's how that works. I think the fully guaranteed money is the fully guaranteed money. It has nothing to do with it.
No, that's not the way this works. I know this for a fact. Like, this isn't me guessing.
I don't know. I wouldn't hold myself as an expert on the NFL.
No, I literally researched.
I'm out on that one.
I literally researched this before the show. So the way that it's not the first year, it's the second chunk of that is then on the sliding scale based on what the next team pays him because it's the injury guarantee.
Okay, so let's say that is the fact, right? So why, if I'm Russell Wilson, if I'm due $18 million and I take $9 million from another team, why not just take $1 million? That way, the Denver Broncos still
probably would,
and that's exactly the
caveat to it,
right?
And that's exactly what some of the other analysts and former GMs have said in analyzing and looking at this and saying Russ is basically holding all of the cards at this point because he has the ability to basically flip the bird on the way out the door and say, I'm playing for the league minimum.
Yep.
I'm
on my Bobby Bonilla stuff. I'm cashing in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So because no matter what, he's making the same amount of money regardless. So it's actually in his best interest to allow his new team to put more around him by taking less money. Right?
I'm a $1 million quarterback for the Falcons, and y'all can load up all my weapons and all my protection. Give me 3-4 wide receivers and running backs, and I'll just sit back and let Denver pay me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And still be bad.
Well, I mean,
but hey, at least it's for the league minimum this time.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, that's kind of the
Russell
Wilson situation. There's the thing with this is there is no good lane in this situation. I believe that all parties have made mistakes. I believe that the end result is going to be dirty. And Coach, the one thing I think we can probably both agree on is I think this is going to get real messy real quick. And we're going to have a whole bunch of new crap that's going to come out real soon.
Hey, when you start sullying my name, I'm gonna throw dirt on yours. That's how they do it nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Question. Here we go. Question for you guys. Well, in the panel, really. Looking at Jack Kenneth's comment here of the Russ trade being the worst trade.
Yes.
Which one do you think was worse, that one or Deshaun Watson?
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I have to agree.
No, and hold on. I will even qualify exactly why I think the Russell Wilson trade was the worst. Deshaun Watson was younger and had more potential and what the Broncos gave up to get Russell Wilson, not only did they give up the 2 1s and 2 2s, but they also signed him to an equally punitive contract at the end of it as well. So they gave up the King's ransom and they paid him the punitive contract.
I didn't
want you to post that at all. I really did not want you to post it at all. But
all right, my bad.
I think that what the Seattle diary turned into as well makes it bad, because you look at the amount of good players that turned out of that deal, makes it really bad from me. I think Houston did pretty well in their own right, but I don't think they got what they from what Seattle got. I think that if you compare the two in the amount of players that each team that traded away their quarterbacks got, I think Seattle was definitely winning in that battle.
Well, of course you are. You got a top 5 pick.
Well, they gave
up
a 12 or 12. They gave up 3 first-round picks for.
But I think that second first-round pick turned into Will Anderson.
Yeah.
So I mean,
traded one. They traded one of them though.
I think they used that to trade up to get the trade up in the first round to get back-to-back picks.
You're correct.
So that pick turned into Will Anderson, their edge rusher. So yeah. So
they got their edge, they got the right tackle, they got their cornerback, they got a safety, I think, as well out of the deal, and then they got another player because I think they took one of the seconds and they traded back, and so it ended up working out where like most of Seattle's young stud players almost all came from the Russell Wilson trade.
Yep.
Oh, and sorry, and let's also not forget the quarterback that just won them the last game, they got in that trade as well.
Drew Lock.
Yeah. Because they got Drew Lock. They got
2 games ago. Gino played the last couple of games, but 2 games ago. That
but
Monday
they're
night
out of the playoffs now.
Yeah, the Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles game. Eagles game. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're eliminated.
They got Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, and Drew Lock in that trade as well.
Yep, on top of the picks.
And
they hit on every pick.
They're not eliminated.
And they hit on every pick they got.
They hit on every pick.
So, yeah. I mean, if that's not rubbing salt in the wound,
perennial corners.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That Devin Witherspoon. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a move on.
So
and Woolen.
Woolen was a late round pick. Tariq Woolen was a late round pick.
Yeah.
I think it was with the pick they got from Denver, though.
Impossible. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look this up now. I got me curious.
So the Texans. Here's the problem, and this is the interesting piece that I think that you're going to see the difference between, say, a Seattle and a Houston. So there's some talk here in the chat about the Texans, the pick they got from the Browns. They traded and eventually end up with C.J. Stroud, so they have their franchise guy. I don't think that's an argument that you can argue again. I think that's true. I agree that is in fact what happened, and C.J. Stroud is certainly looking like that guy, and good for the Texans for getting that guy.
Oh, yeah.
The problem the Texans still have is that they got their guy before they built the trenches around their guy. Right?
It don't look like it's mattering, though.
It's
mattering.
No, but
I will
the problem
I think they fortified their O-line pretty well. They went out and got Shaq Mason. They got Tunstall already. They drafted one. They did draft one. So they got 3 pieces. 3 out of the 5 they got. They did pick up in.
But the point is that what we've seen out of the truly competitive teams, and I mean the guys that were at the top of the game. So, for example, Alex, I'm going to use your Chiefs as a prime example for what they did. Is when they got Patrick Mahomes, they had a solid offensive line. They drafted and traded up for Pat Mahomes, and then the very next year after trading for Patrick Mahomes, they continued to bolster both the defensive and offensive line, and basically they've won 2 Super Bowls since, right? So the Chiefs have kind of been that team to look at for a team that was willing to give up draft picks to then go get their franchise quarterback. You bolster the offensive, defensive lines, and then you get your guy to kind of fill in the gap. They had Alex Smith that was kind of getting them almost all the way there, but they knew that he wasn't quite the guy that was going to be able to get them over the hump. So they kind of reverted back to building their roster, and then they grabbed their quarterback. Whereas what the Texans have done is they've half built their roster and then they got their quarterback. And now my concern is getting their quarterback is going to put them into playoff contention most, if not every year, because the quarterback is that darn good, which is going to get them out of the running for some of the top defensive and offensive line players. And they're going to have to potentially go big in free agency to try and get those guys to fill in those gaps, which can get pricey and expensive and eventually put you into kind of cap purgatory like some of these other teams have done, rather than cycling guys in and out. That's my comment. I think that Seattle has actually been able to build their trenches first. And now if they give up several first-round picks to go get their quarterback, do you think Pete Carroll cares?
Yeah, no.
They just need a quarterback, in my opinion.
I will, looking at this Broncos draft guy, was asking, looks like they still have Cleveland's first-round pick this next year, but almost all the other picks included, they've traded them to move around. So, I mean, in essence, they did use it to get Will Anderson, and but the only guy that they actually drafted with any pick was Dameon Pierce, which, I mean, at least this time last year wasn't a bad-looking one.
And there it is.
But at the same time, I think they've clearly made moves. It's crazy that we've seen two teams so like close in time make a similar move and just kind of totally retool their roster off of it.
Yep.
And and both of them almost not really fumbled the bag on it either. So
yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So it could be mutually beneficial for at least for the Houston Texans and the Seattle Seahawks.
Yes, exactly. So either way, I think there's going to be some interesting things.
They do, Zach. All right.
Yeah.
Chill out.
So I think there's going to be some interesting things that come out of the Wilson Denver Broncos piece. I think some of them are going to be ugly, and I think that there's blame to go around on both parties. I think both parties are acting in their own best interest, which why wouldn't they? Okay, like I have no fault for Russell Wilson and why he's doing what he's doing, and I understand why the Broncos are doing what they're doing, and I just think it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. And to answer some of the other questions in the chat, I have a sneaky suspicion that part of this contract may have been a lingering Elway move, which is why George Payton hasn't immediately been fired. But if there were some shady wrongdoings in terms of how Wilson's side was approached or not approached, I do think that George Payton will be the quick and easy guillotine guy for the Denver Broncos. I think that they're just going to say it was him, go.
You think that they'll go back and get their GM from the Saints to join Payton?
Ireland, yeah. Yes, I think the old Saints GM would be one of the first calls.
Trade for Kamara.
Simply because
don't forget Taysom.
There was some pretty good draft picks that came out of that relationship, and I also think that when you know what the guy wants in terms of for his scheme and the types of players, I think there's a shorthand that can be had there.
I don't know, man. Look at how many first round picks they gave up. The Eagles, I think, had like two of them back to back.
Yep. I'm not saying it was perfect, and I'm saying that ownership can look back, and frankly, this would be a good test for Sean Payton as well. Just how much inward looking are you willing to do to say what worked, what didn't? If you have that big of an ego where you think you've done nothing wrong, then this tenure with the Broncos won't work out for Sean Payton either. So I think that'll be something to look ahead towards as well. However, if he's got the wherewithal to look inwards and say, yes, I made mistakes too, then I actually think that this could actually be the most productive relationship where you have a guy that's drafting and knows what he's drafting for with you, and the head coach that has tweaked his approach to add a little bit more clarity to the situation. I'm not willing to bet which one is which, but if it's the guy that has some, looking in the mirror that's been done, it has the potential to at least be a much better relationship and much more mistake-free, we'll say. right? And I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Like I will be critical of Sean Payton when I think it's absolutely due. And he has had a few mistakes this year, which I will call out in the offseason. But I don't think that what we're seeing right here is necessarily fully at the feet of Sean Payton. Although at the same time, it is completely disingenuous to say that he is blameless in this situation as well. So I think there just needs to be a more nuanced conversation that sadly many are not having. Anyways, guys, we're going to move on to the upcoming week and get into some quick reviews of our games, even though there's only one of them that really matters per se. It's coming up.
I don't think any of them matter, to be honest with you, because I mean, all three teams in our division outside of the Chiefs are eliminated from the playoffs, and the Chiefs though are
eliminated.
Sure. So I mean, I think let's put it this way: it may not be that they're critical, but I think there's key highlights in each game. And I'm just going to quickly just do the round robin, see what you guys think, and see if I'm right or wrong. Mm-hmm. I think the Broncos, their main highlight is Stidham the guy that we're going to roll with next season, or do we have to go find someone else to fill that void? Yes or no? I think that's the big one. Number two is for the Chiefs. Was last week the start of something, or are you going to regress to where you were? The Raiders, I think, are looking in similar spots to the Broncos, which is actually, I think the Raiders and Chargers, rather, Coach, I think you guys are in similar positions now, which is what does the depth on our roster look like? Because we need to know for the upcoming draft and in the offseason what pieces we want to fill and which pieces, like in terms of the priority order that we want to fill them in. And I think that you and the Raiders are in very similar positions.
I agree, DZ. Listen, just can we wave the white flag? I mean, again, I think, honestly, truly, to be honest with you, I think that we've seen enough. I think that we know exactly what we're looking at and what we have at this point. One more game is not going to define that, in my opinion. I mean, we've been on an interim coach for more than one game, so it's not like, and we've been out of contention for a good amount of it. So I don't think it's an issue because we've seen a lot of backups play in the last two games. So the idea of us trying to figure things out from here is not something that we're going to learn much from in this one game. Again, and the Chiefs are playing a lot of their backups. Patrick Mahomes not playing, and a few others. So
playing,
so
sure.
it's not much to be had. And it's really the only thing you're really risking right now is long-term injury to somebody you don't want to lose. So that's the concern for me. That's my biggest concern, that we come out of the game healthy. And that's pretty much it, because we just try to preserve guys and don't have any long-term lingering injuries that's going to go, bleed into next season. That's where it lands for me.
I have a quick question. Is DZ still here and any other Chargers fans?
Yeah.
He's good. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. I got a question for both you and DZ. It was Haas or Doss in the Broncos game?
Keelan Doss, yes.
Yeah, Keelan Doss.
He played.
And Erickson.
Old Raider guy.
Yeah, Alex
Keelan
Erickson
Doss.
played. He had 98 yards. Receiving.
So, no. I'm not knocking those guys. It's actually, I'm spinning those as positives. Like, they look really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was actually really impressed with both of those guys.
Right.
But I want to know from all of the Chargers fans here in the chat, and Coach, I want your take obviously here as well, which is, why is it that Herbert doesn't seem to utilize those guys, but we saw them play clearly well against the Broncos? What made that game different?
It wasn't on Justin Herbert. They are the 6th and 7th persons on the depth chart. That's the issue. Keelan Doss hadn't been an active player until this week past. He's always been on the practice squad. So we've never seen him active for a game. So that's when the coaches did not elevate him and see what he had. Erickson came in when we lost Josh Palmer. But again, we still had Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen was still playing. So we had to lose Keenan Allen, Palmer, and all those guys and to elevate Erickson and Doss to begin with. So you're finally seeing.
You have two dudes. They are good.
Listen, I don't make the decisions. I don't make the decisions. That's all I can really say. I mean, again, had they been given the opportunity, and again, that goes back to the coach's decisions. The coaches make the decision on active roster. And then when you got first rounders and big time money guys like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer, those guys aren't going to see a lot of opportunity. You got 4 guys ahead of them.
Yeah.
So they're not going to see a whole lot of opportunities. This is the time where you see guys like Keelan Doss and Alex Erickson because there's nobody else out there. I like Keelan Doss from the rip. I liked him when he was with the Raiders and he was in Hard Knocks. I was surprised he didn't make the roster for them. So I still don't get the issue with him. I don't get it. Why people aren't kicking the tires on him and giving him some work personally. But again, gotta make
there's just so many other options though. It's like there's just always especially a wide receiver.
Right.
It's just like you're either a dog or you have, you've got to establish it very quick or there's going to be someone else.
Yeah.
So it's.
And the rate we give receivers every year, I mean, you got a short opportunity window, that like you said.
And there's been guys that play into contracts in like these last games. Like the Chiefs was in Mahomes' first start, he only had Albert Wilson to throw to, and then turned around and Miami Dolphins gave him like a 3-year, $20 million contract after that.
Yeah. And if you're smart, if you believe in Doss and you believe in Erickson, get them, while they're cheap, because you don't want them going for 1,000 yards in a season and then they're going to be expensive. So you'd be best suited to, if you think they can have a future with the team, sign up for pennies now, for a couple of years and see what you have, and that way you have, inexpensive talent to go along with your high price talent.
Like, here's an example, Alex. If Doss is actually on the practice squad of the Chargers, if I'm KC, I am immediately signing him to my active roster.
It's a little late for that. It's a little late for that, but I see what you're saying.
No, but he's a better wide receiver than that dude that you're paying $30 million to right now. So let's just call a duck a duck.
Well, he's not better than Mike Williams.
But at the same time.
No, I meant Alex. He's got MVS or whatever.
Gotcha.
Mr.
But at the same time, though, I mean, Doss does his first game, so it's like, and he hasn't. It's like the same. You're back up for a reason. So like, there's something about him that teams just won't do that. So it's like, I mean, it sounds like a great remedy to the issue, but if it was such a fruitful avenue, we would see teams constantly doing that. If someone drops the ball, like, oh, nope, I'm signing this guy, you're out.
Right.
So I just don't think that that's something that you can just easily do with it, especially when the problem is so across the board. It's more of like,
and it
you
could
either got to
be
figure this out or.
It could be a consistency issue. We might pop one practice, you might pop one game, but the idea of you being consistently productive it could be the issue. I mean, they're ultimately. I mean, clearly we know coaches, and we are outside looking in when we giving our opinions. Obviously, we're not in the room, but it could be something that the coaches that have I guess you can say pedigree in evaluating talent know that there's something wrong with Doss why he's not on the active roster and making big money at this moment. So it's got to be something there. It's got to be something. We just don't know what it is.
But also, it's like some teams are kind of stingy about their practice squad guys and like going to and keeping them in house, but then they're not quite like in house. Like they're there, but not quite there to be on the team, but they still want them on the team. Or it's just like as simple as I've had a few friends of mine, at least go to mini camp, like the rookie mini camps, and one of my buddies. He's like, yeah, Mike McCarthy literally told me I was going to make the team, but they decided they wanted like a 7 or 8 receivers instead of an extra center / guard. So it's just like literally something like that. Like, oh, this guy was athletic enough. Like we like what he did, but I think going into preseason, I'd rather have one extra receiver than a lineman. So just cut him. So it's like, just like the philosophy from that and stuff. Could be reasons, and then just guys wanting to keep those people around, not letting them go have a chance somewhere else. But I don't know. He's been around for a long time.
Yes.
And I think in the NFL, sometimes consistent depth that is there is a valuable thing, whether it's used or not. To know, like, I have a guy that I know, hey, we have no receivers. I got to call you up to play. He might go put on, $120 and a touchdown. I don't know, but I at least trust it.
No, I think that's fair too. There's a question in the chat, Coach, and then we'll wrap up the show, which was there seems to be odds-on favorite that Keenan Allen is a favorite to land in Vegas as the head coach.
You mean Kellen Moore? You said Keenan Allen.
Kellen Moore. Sorry, Kellen Moore.
I saw Jim Harbaugh.
Well, yeah, but that'll just be a bidding war, in all honesty. That because again, he's been more in the news for the Chargers job than the Raiders job. Because of course, you have the issue with the players endorsing Antonio Pierce first and foremost. So you have to deal with that blowback if he's not hired, because the players love him. And then again, if you feel like that all will go away if Harbaugh's hired, you gotta pony up the dough. And does Mark Davis have any trepidation about that because he's done it twice already? Big money contracts and they hadn't panned out. So that's a question too, because I think that I don't know how far they're willing to go, but the Chargers organization made it clear that they're going to write checks this time around to get a coach. So we'll see.
Blank checks, baby.
Yeah, Kellen Moore's been in the news to have the job. Of course, Antonio Pierce, and then, of course, Harbaugh. And then what's funny about Harbaugh is that he has the same age of Don Yee that Tom Brady does. So that's probably why it's connected.
Tom Brady, owner / marketer.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this, though. Since we haven't really had the blessing of Captain Jack here to cover the Raiders, do you think Antonio Pierce has coached his way into being their coach next year, or do you think Mark Davis is more about I need to get another big name in here?
Well, I think the only big name you can talk about right now is Harbaugh. He's not going to get another Patriot guy like Belichick. So I think if you can't get Harbaugh in any way possible, or he's going to be too punitive in the cost, then he has to go with AP. Because again, when the players endorse you, you got to have a guy that they will be okay with in replacing him if Pierce is not the guy.
Yeah.
I think that he almost has to stick with Antonio Pierce at this point for the full-time coaching gig. I think that with the 1 or 2 years more of the McDaniels contract, I think that's the length of time that you give Antonio Pierce to kind of turn it around and kind of do the right things. And if that doesn't work out, then you've freed up the cash flow within the organization. You've given the players whom they said they wanted the chance and opportunity to kind of do the right thing. And then you reevaluate at that point. And I think the players will then agree with your assessment, and you're not going to have a mutiny. Because, I mean, ideally, you'd expect to see Crosby there probably for the next 5-6 years anyway.
You would hope.
You'd hope. So you want to make sure that a dude like that is going to, be on your side as an owner no matter what, right? So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think so that it needs to be Antonio Pierce, but needs to bring in a more quarterback centric offensive coordinator. Yeah,
he's going to have to hire Rockstar as a coordinator. He's going to have to do that.
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know who you're going to get that would do that without. I mean, who would make that move? Without being the head coach, that gives you that rock star coordinator, other than someone from college.
Well, if they're going to revamp the whole staff, I mean, Kellen Moore could be allowed him removed to be OC. Make him do it how they did Airbnb. You can make him assistant head coach and make him the OC offensive coordinator.
True.
The other thing that we're not factoring in here is current offensive coordinators who coach themselves into head coaching gigs that are on their last legs. And interestingly enough, Dayball there with New York is not looking great, but they're probably going to keep him. But if they make a surprise move there and get him out, he would be an interesting guy, I think, for that slash role, like the OC / assistant head coach kind of gig. I also think that you're going to have a few other guys that might be interested in that job there with the Las Vegas Raiders, because I think that they have enough players that they looked good in stretches, and with a good draft, and I think Champ Kelly is going to be a great GM for them. I think that I do think that they're going to be far more competitive next year than they were this year.
I'd agree with that.
Fair enough.
I mean, we're going to see a lot of. I think what Schefter said, there could be up to 8 head coaching vacancies this offseason.
Yeah,
I mean, so there's going to be a lot of changes, and there's going to be a lot of.
Only place you're not running to is Carolina. Everybody else is going to
that owner's only making it worse too, throwing drinks on people.
Exactly.
Being a POS, but
exactly.
I saw too that was it Liberty? Someone's OC is like a smaller school OC resigned today from a college because he's like being talked about for NFL coaching opportunities, and just because he was like a Kingsbury where they just ran an air raid and we're like number one in the nation in passing. But I mean, there's gonna be a lot of moving around for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and I actually agree that a guy like Bieniemy could be in the contention for that.
I think he should, but I would say new ownership. I think
that's my only issue. Yeah. They could just blow up the whole staff and bring a whole new staff. And then if you have a different guy in mind for head coach, he's going to want his own staff. He's not going to want to inherit anybody.
But I think that you do see Bieniemy finally get a head coaching opportunity somewhere. And one, because he's been the talked about candidate for 4 or 5 years now, but it's always been like, well, he's in KC. How much of it is really him? Well, then I think the fact that you see him leave, and you see the Chiefs dip in production across the board.
Yep.
Washington go up.
Yep.
Washington,
Sam Howell leading the league in passes for a good part of the year. Yep.
I think that coupled together, I think you see some team's going to give him a chance, and he should get one.
I agree.
I think he is a hell of he's up there in terms of offensive mind. And I think if you put him in the right situation and support him, I think you can see him be pretty productive.
I agree. And I think his ability to be very well respected by his players and holding people accountable would definitely ring bells as far as him establishing a culture wherever he goes. And DJ, I agree with that. I think Steichen leaving the Eagles is a big problem too. I think it can't be undersold that losing your rockstar coordinator definitely changes your trajectory year to year.
Yeah,
that definitely is a thing. I think the Lions going to feel it. They lose Ben Johnson.
Look at the Eagles.
Yeah, the Lions lose Ben Johnson. They're going to take a step back.
Both coordinators,
Exactly. Look how they look now.
And
so Jack, I'm gonna take this and slightly disagree with it. I heard Von Miller say it best when he was on the Broncos in an interview. Players want to play for coaches that they believe can make them better. And if that happens to be a former player, then so be it. But players ultimately, especially that upper echelon, like your Max Crosby's, your Von Millers, your Peyton Mannings, your Tom Brady's, any player that's in that top part of their game, and even the other players, but especially that upper echelon of players want to play for coaches that can make them better, because that's all they want. They want to be better. That is their number one goal. That's why they're there. That's why they're here. That's why they play the game, is to always be better. And so I think that's the kind of the North Star for guys like that, which is, I want to be better. I will be better. Can you get me there? And if the answer to that is yes, they will run through a brick wall, literally. So yeah, exactly. They will bite ankles and kneecaps and everything, right?
right.
So, but anyways, guys, I think this is going to be an interesting week. A lot of meaningless games, but a lot of interesting results that will come from these games, because you're going to inevitably see a guy or two or three that will kind of pop out in the film that you probably hadn't seen before. I look at Doss, for example, and just the last game coach as a great example in that, for me at least, saying that dude's a good player. Why isn't he playing more? And I think you're going to see a few more of those guys crop up, and some of those guys will end up maybe not on your team, but on other teams as a result of the film that they put on this weekend.
That's right. Put the film out there.
For sure.
Yep, exactly. And so, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, where the four of us, yes, there will be four of us next week, jump into the comings and goings of the AFC West and look ahead to both the playoffs and the offseason for the other three teams here. Alex, obviously, you're the lone exception. Until next week, guys, where the West side is the best side. Peace!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute.